Second wave of blasts ripped through Lebanon. After pagers, walkie-talkies now detonate. Home solar panels up in flames. Over 14 killed, 450 injured in the blasts. Hezbollah vows Israel will pay. Lebanon reels, world on edge.
We still don't want to see an escalation of any kind.
Hezbollah-Israel on the brink of war. The big focus on 5 Live. It's most definitely a new era of warfare, and it comes just ahead of the first anniversary of the October 7th attack by the Hamas on Israel. But what's happening now has taken the entire world by surprise. Horror, fascination over how Israel, well, claimed to be Israel, looks to be bumping off Hezbollah terrorists. The Northern Front, that big story right up ahead on 5 Live as we decode the next phase of this story. I'm Shiv. As the Hezbollah-Israel war escalates, remember that's just one front of the war that has been on since October 7th last year. Well, things took a decidedly horrific turn a couple of days ago with pagers exploding, but it looks like it isn't just pagers that have been rigged as weapons, because now solar panels, walkie-talkies, mobile phones, and who knows what other devices have not only exploded, but are possibly waiting to explode and kill Israel's marked enemies. This is the story from Lebanon.
Two days of sudden explosions. Serial blasts have rocked Lebanon. First pagers, and then handheld radios used by armed group Hezbollah detonated across the country. The walkie-talkie explosions claimed at least 20 lives and left over 450 injured.
And that's exactly what we are going to do.
Israel says that the war is entering a new phase. The IDF is moving troops from Gaza to the northern front, where they could target Hezbollah forces stationed in southern Lebanon.
We are opening a new phase in the war. It requires courage, determination, and perseverance from us.
Hezbollah has vowed to retaliate. The US says intense diplomatic efforts are on to prevent an escalation in Israel-Lebanon war.
We still don't want to see an escalation of any kind. We don't believe that the way to solve where we're at in this crisis is by additional military operations.
With both Israel and Hezbollah in war mode, Lebanon could become the new war theatre. Bureau Report, India Today.
And we've got some breaking news coming in, this time from the Western press. The New York Times now reporting that the Israeli government didn't tamper with the devices, the pagers and the mobile phones, etc., that exploded in Lebanon, killing Hezbollah terrorists. It was the Israeli government itself that had manufactured them as part of an elaborate ruse, reports the New York Times, quoting unspecified defense and intelligence officials, unnamed defense officials from Israel. The New York Times, in a shattering report, suggests that Israel has neither confirmed nor denied any role in the explosions, but that 12 current and former defense and intelligence officials who were briefed on the attack say the Israelis were behind it, describing the operation as complex and long in the making. So, viewer, this is big. The New York Times reporting that the Israeli government, remember, Israel has officially denied having anything to do with these explosions whatsoever. On record, they've denied any role played whatsoever. But the New York Times is now quoting as many as 12 officials, unnamed officials, as saying that the Israel government did not tamper with pagers or mobile phones coming in from Taiwan or Japan, but had actually manufactured them itself and supplied them into Lebanon as part of some kind of a huge, a gargantuan infiltration operation, possibly using artificial technology, logos and branding to mimic technology that was coming in from Taiwan or Japan in order to get those devices into the hands and the pockets of Hezbollah persons. The pagers began shipping to Lebanon in the summer of 2022, before the 2023 attack, in fact, in small numbers, but production was quickly ramped up after the Hezbollah stopped using cell phones. Very, very important information coming in, viewer. This New York Times report is suggesting that this methodology used by Israel predates what happened on October 7th last year in the attack that killed hundreds of Israelis in that Hamas attack. Israel had put into motion a plan to establish some kind of a shell company, says the New York Times, that would pose as an international pager producer. Let me just quickly summarize that for you, because this is, if any part of what the New York Times is reporting is true, this means that Israel did not tamper with pagers coming in from Taiwan or Japan or wherever it is, planting something in it and supplying it to Lebanon. It was Israel itself that was actually manufacturing fake versions of Taiwanese or Japanese handheld devices and supplying them, as part of a massive ruse into Lebanon so that they would be used by the Hezbollah. This was something that started in 2022, and Gaurav Sawant is with me live. Gaurav, very, very interesting information. Obviously, all of it, attributed to unnamed sources in the Israeli system. But, if any part of this is true, this is earth-shattering, because it basically means that this kind of an operation, this level of warfare was started before October 7th, 2023, and was probably scaled up and put into action at this time.
Shiv, this truly is next level intelligence gathering and intelligence operations. If, as you rightly point out, any of this is true, but by all accounts it does appear to be true, because look at it prima facie. The Taiwanese company Gold Apollo say they did not supply these pagers. At the same time, the Japanese company also says that they had stopped manufacturing these handsets way back in 2004 and 14. So between 4 and 14, they manufactured them. So who was manufacturing it? Beyond that, it now appears that Israel, the moment it realized that Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, was telling his cadre that the secret Israeli agent that they're looking for are the mobile phones being carried by the Hezbollah operatives themselves, their wives, their children, their families, and that gives away information to the Israelis and bury those mobile phones. They realized that he wanted them to go down and start using lower technology or old technology, obsolete technology, which were pagers. They started manufacturing those pagers. They floated a company which sounded exactly like the real company, whether the Japanese or the Taiwanese company, floated an office, had an office in Hungary, in Budapest, and the moment they got an order, usually everyone goes for what is known as L1. You understand L1, the concept of the lowest pricing. So they gave better than market pricing, and Hezbollah were drawn to that, and then they started manufacturing it, initially passing just regular pagers, because that way they got all the information that was given by the Hezbollah commanders to the Hezbollah fighters on those pagers. Israel was able to intercept them since they were manufacturing it. Two, the moment Hassan Nasrallah asked them to scale up manufacturing, they started putting this PETN of bomb, and they had all the time to do it, a good period of 5 months to do this. They scaled it up to this devastating effect. The timing again, Shiv, very crucial. Many argue that they had to detonate these pagers right now because Hezbollah was planning a massive attack on Israel, and Israel preempted it by throwing that entire command and control system out of gear, communication out of gear, and taking the middle-rung fighters out of that battle.
This is, this New York Times report, like Gaurav said, if any part of this is true, it basically takes the story that we already know about what happened in Lebanon and exponentially makes it bigger. it makes the complexity of the planning and execution of what Israel has managed to do against the Hezbollah, hundreds of times bigger than just what we so far understood to be true, which is that Israel had intercepted imports of these pagers, had tampered with them, planted explosives, and then forwarded them into Lebanon. This New York Times report suggests that the source of those pagers itself was Israel as part of a much larger subterfuge and deception program in order to create artificial pagers pretending to be pagers supplied by Taiwan or Japan, and then making them go into Lebanon. But just take a look, a quick recap of where all these devices have exploded so far. In Beirut, mobile phones have exploded. You've seen a mobile phone exploding there. In the city of Sidon, handheld radios have reported to have exploded. In Beirut, serial pagers, and these are the explosions that have happened, the largest in number, as Gaurav was just explaining to us, because mobile phones are in disuse by the Hezbollah. Serial pager blasts have taken place in the capital of Beirut, and also lately, home solar panels have exploded as well. So you've got, walkie-talkies, radio transistors, mobile phones, serial pagers, and home solar panels that have all exploded. 20 people have killed, over 350 people have been injured in these explosions over the last couple of days. I also want to bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra, senior fellow with IPCS and a well-known commentator on matters military and strategic affairs. Abhijit, welcome. Abhijit, the New York Times report that's just emerged, I'm sure you've had a chance to look at some part of it, but yeah. I'll quickly summarize that for you. They've basically said these were not pagers from Taiwan or elsewhere. The origin of these pagers itself was Israel. They manufactured themselves and supplied them to Lebanon as part of a deep plan that began sometime in 2022 when the Hezbollah had stopped using mobile phones. Abhijit, what do you think?
Yeah, so I take everything the New York Times says with a large bucket of salt. I don't take the New York Times seriously, just about as seriously as I take Al Jazeera. What my own sources in Israel are telling me is that they were assembled in Hungary, but different parts were sourced from different places. It turns out the operative parts, which is the parts that were injected with somewhere between 7 to 20 grams of PETN, were the ones that were manufactured in Israel and sent. Right. So this was complete supply chain, and the company was definitely Israeli owned. So this was complete supply chain compromise. And imagine the irony of it, Shiv. Hezbollah paid Israel to get bombed.
Incredible, yeah.
For me, I can't get over that.
I want you to explain a little bit more about the compromising of an entire supply chain. And Abhijit, you understand this as well. Gaurav was also touching upon it just a moment ago. To compromise an entire supply chain for the supply of such devices would require, a kind of perfect symphony of deception at so many different levels: export, import, licensing, cargoes, paperwork, all kinds of things.
I think what the way I have understood it is, they were privy to a lot of Hezbollah chatter and, in fact, public chatter. This wasn't even closed doors chatter, where Hezbollah were going around saying very proudly, that they're going to go back in time, back to older technology, which is much tougher to compromise. If you remember, some 2-3 years back, Reuters also ran a piece saying Hezbollah's master plan is to go towards drones and go back to pagers and things like that. So Israel had a lot of intel confirmed by secondary directed intel, as I understand it, of what Hezbollah plans were. But it is the genius here lies in the rapidity of coming up with such an audacious plan of buying. Remember, the license for production at the Hungarian plant was purchased fair and square from the Taiwanese company. The Taiwanese company's manager has admitted that a Taiwanese national called Teresa set up his meeting with the Hungarian delegation, which signed all the licenses, paid all the fees and everything, and manufactured these things at the assembled these things at the Hungarian plant. So they planned minuscule detail for something that may or may not happen. 5, 6, 7 years down the line, as it so happened, it was 2-3 years down the line. This requires it's not just the intel required. It is the leadership, the actioning of intel, the direction you take the intel, the operational secrecy at keeping this all tight and not, wink, wink, nudge, nudge campaign.
Yeah.
And finally being able to do this at the exact right moment when it is so crucially required.
I'm just wondering because, the Hezbollah has, Iran behind it, Abhijit. Shouldn't they have been suspicious that this kind of thing may be an option for Mossad? Because ultimately, if you look back a few decades as well, the Mossad, Israel security agencies have employed tactics of this kind, to get even with their enemies. They have used devices, they've used phones, different kinds of things. Obviously, much more primitive versions of what they've done now. But, this kind of thing should have been expected. How did they miss something like this, especially in the last 1 year?
Pure hubris. If you remember, Israel pioneered the phone bomb. The first time it was used is 1972 on a chap called Mahmoud Hamshari, who was the PLO representative in Paris. And there it was again placed in the speaker, those old style phones we used to have when we were kids. It was placed in the speaker of that phone. An operative called, there was a voice expert to confirm this was Hamshari's voice. It had detonated and it severed his head clean. Now, for, a people that have been at the receiving end of these Israeli techno-marvel bombs, you'd reckon they would be a bit smarter. I think this was hubris. The hubris of having gone back to primitive enough technology that Israel would not compromise it. I think they thought, the danger of electronics like this is electronic interception, not electronic detonation. And this is how you wrong-foot your enemy. When they expect something, you do exactly what they do not expect, which is put a bomb inside the phone itself.
It's incredible. Abhijit, stay with me because I want to talk for a moment after this report about, what's going to happen now inside Lebanon, what happens to the Hezbollah and what happens to the actual conflict on the northern front. Recent attacks on the Hezbollah's communication infrastructure reveal, like Abhijit was also saying, attention to minuscule, terrifyingly minuscule detail and a sophisticated adversary like Israel that is well-resourced and technologically advanced. It faced its historically worst attack on October the 7th last year. This appears to be the first big targeted reaction. The precise timing suggests huge planning, deep planning. In this context, walkie-talkies have been weaponized by exploiting their frequencies to intercept or jam communications, turning them into tools for disruption or misinformation as well. Just take a look at some of the possible theories that we've been looking at. This is the case of these exploding devices. Theory number one, walkie-talkies modified to include a secondary circuit activated by radio frequency. Pretty primitive technology if you actually think about it. Explosive-laden walkie-talkies then remotely triggered. And remember what Abhijit just said. Hubris about the comfort of old technology, but that is where the devil actually may lie. Theory number two, walkie-talkies and pagers tampered with before distribution. That we know to be true now, except the source remains in question. Devices intercepted, fitted with 20 grams of explosive charges, and then supplied to the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Theory number three, booby-trapping communication devices, wiring transmit button to an explosive circuit. That's also a possibility that experts are suggesting. Theory number four, the devices are equipped with a timed activated mechanism already pre-programmed. Sensors detect movement or usage and then explode. This seems a little less likely because what would be the actual algorithm? What would be the terms given to the program in terms of the conditions under which it would actually detonate? Take a look at what these theories actually mean at this time.
A case of exploding wireless devices. From a funeral procession of the son of Hezbollah MP who died in a pager blast on Tuesday, to a mobile shop, to home solar panel explosions. A second wave of coordinated blasts ripped through Lebanon on Wednesday, resulting in the deadliest day since cross-border tensions between Hezbollah and Israel escalated nearly a year ago. The attacks on Hezbollah's communication infrastructure are unusual and sophisticated, suggesting the involvement of a well-resourced and technologically advanced adversary. The timing indicates a high level of coordination and planning. So how were walkie-talkies weaponized? One theory is that the walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah operatives were modified to include a secondary circuit that could be activated by a specific radio frequency. By transmitting a signal on the same frequency, the explosive-laden walkie-talkies could have been remotely triggered. Another possible explanation is that the walkie-talkies and pagers were tampered with prior to the distribution. Hezbollah relies heavily on communication equipment for coordinating and intelligence gathering. It's conceivable that some of these devices were intercepted, fitted with small explosive charges, and then returned to Hezbollah operatives without their knowledge.
PTN is one explosive which is weight-wise, it is much more powerful than TNT. There's something like they have a factor which decides the potency of explosive. So it is 1.6 PTN. That it's called a relative effective factor. Gives you flexibility. You can twist it, turn it. It's very malleable, foldable, moldable, and 3 to 5 grams of PTN is enough to kill a person. That's what we've been seeing. If you see this ambulance blast, which has happened because with the walkie-talkie, possibly the explosive being used in walkie-talkie, and few laptops have also gone to the outer space. So there, since bodies are bigger, so more explosive is there, and that's why the casualty is more. The walkie-talkies claim 20 lives, as per the unconfirmed news.
A more direct method might involve booby-trapping the communication devices to explode upon their use. This could involve wiring the transmit button of the walkie-talkie to an explosive circuit. Another possibility is that the walkie-talkies or pagers were equipped with a timed activation mechanism or sensors that detected movement or usage. The serial blast signaled a significant shift in the tactics used against Hezbollah, showing an increased focus on psychological warfare, targeting not just the group's physical assets, but also its trust in everyday communication tools.
Israelis forced these people who believe in a 1400 years old ideology to go back to that era to survive, if they want to survive. Like the memes saying that pigeons will be used and all. So this is the biggest impact, that fear of unknown, the fear of unpredictable attack, the factor of uncertainty. And beyond that, like you said, there's no limit, ma'am. I mean, they can go to any kind of gadget and do it. Pager was possibly the most difficult.
The walkie-talkie blast represent a new chapter in long-standing conflict between Hezbollah and its adversaries. With Shivani Sharma in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go back to Abhijit now to get clarity on what he thinks about, where this leaves the Hezbollah. Abhijit, the Hezbollah, 20. We've just got news in that the death toll has gone up to 25 now, with over 370 people injured. What does this do to the Hezbollah's, communication infrastructure, its ability to plan, its ability to coordinate and collaborate for attacks now? Because it'll seem like any device that they're operating now is compromised.
Look, it is devastating for them because the pagers were their redundancy plan, right? The pagers were the crucial mobile element because, as I understand it, the operating orders were the moment you get a message on the pager, you find a landline and call. And that way, Israel has to surveil every single landline, every single mobile in order to know which Hezbollah guy is talking to whom, kind of thing. Which was fundamentally, it was overloading the Israeli system. Now, with all those pagers gone, that redundancy measure is gone. They will have to think up a new plan that will take months for them to think up. And all the other measures, they don't know. Even if they come up with a redundancy plan now, do you think Israel would have gone into this without thinking, oh, if we take out all their pagers, will they switch to mobiles? Will they switch to this? And would they have jerry-rigged all of those? So they are now, imagine an army without communications.
Yeah,
Your secure radios taken out, all your methods of communication taken out. Devastating blow. The second most devastating blow here, possibly even more devastating than this, is the fact that all of these pages were issued to your mid-level and lower top-level commanders.
Correct.
Every one of them had these pages, and every one of them has blown up, which means you're looking at a complete loss. So assume, look, they're terrorists. We shouldn't compare them to any army, but you're looking at basically every single major brigadier, colonel to say brigadier level officer being killed off in the Hezbollah. How do you think a military operates if that entire middle command is blown up or rendered useless? Either the eyes are gone, the hands are gone, or the legs are gone. If your legs are gone, or at least wounded, no chance of you coming back into the field for about 6 months without physiotherapy and things like that. So it is the command structure taken out. It is the communication structure taken out. And the problem now is Hezbollah is looking at a technological regrouping, which will take 7 to 8 years. They will make mistakes during that. They will go in for technology that is already compromised by Israel and pay another price. The human cost will be much, much more difficult to replace. Remember, in Syria, it was ordinary fighters dying. Here, it has been a decapitation of the middle leadership.
Correct.
Very difficult. These are experienced people, very, very difficult to replace.
What in your view would be Israel's next step? Would it be a scaling up of these tactics to, target, more operatives, more terrorists in other groups as well? Or, could it even possibly be some kind of a ground operation into Lebanon, Abhijit?
From all the satellite intel we're seeing, they're preparing for some kind of a ground operation. There is significant ground movement happening. Now, will they go in? Will they not go in? I don't know. I think what Israel has now done, the third aspect to this is, when all of these pages went off, I'm sure Israel would have had people in every single hospital or hacked and used remote security cameras to see who were all the agents they knew who had been injured, who were all the agents they did not know who had been injured, and track down their families, homes, etc., etc. So the operational security loss in Hezbollah has been so massive. Israel will be waiting to see if that loss justifies a ground invasion. Because if you remember the 2006 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, the campaign against Lebanon, it did not go well. It was classified as an operational failure.
Correct.
They are seeing if they have the military ability to resist as well as they did in 2006. If not, the ground campaign may just end up happening.
Okay, this is a story very rapidly in motion, and we will continue to decode it on an hourly and daily basis. Abhijit, as always, thank you very much for being with me here on 5 Live. Thanks, Abhijit.